Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Greetings to all the viewers on ICSI YouTube channel, wherever, in whichever time zone you are. You're most welcome in this particular webinar. This is something very informative, very energetic, and it's the experience and the knowledge and the energy that has been shared in this webinar on this ICSI platform by Dr. PRIYA VISWESWARAN from USA, the director for Immortality Institute, Houston, Texas. And ma'am is constantly telling us, she is telling us about the new avenues, the new ways that educators can bring into their education and can bring into their training system when they are dealing with the youth, their students, and also for themselves. And the particular information that has been delivered and that has been given by Dr. PRIYA VISWESWARAN, if incorporated into education system can truly become holistic. She has taught about neuro coach, cellular health coaching, functional medicine coaching, and nowadays she's talking about reverse age coaching. So without wasting any time, please put your hands together to welcome Dr. PRIYA VISWESWARAN from USA. Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving your time to us and being with us and sharing your wisdom with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to you and to Gulshan Sharma ji, Major General Dr. Gulshan Sharma ji, about whom now I can say humbly and most respectfully, Prince William and Princess Kate know about. I have talked to them about him for weeks now, and I just want to say thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm so grateful, and I'm very thankful that Chitra ji, you've given me this opportunity, and Gulshan Sharma ji, you've created this wonderful avenue for all of us to share our little bit of knowledge, this little bit of experience, and create a dialogue with people who are interested in taking action and improving their lives, their quality of lives, their lifespan, and their health span. So thank you so very much for this wonderful and great opportunity. So I just wanted to share my screen, if I could. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. So, we kind of ran through this calorie restriction a little bit last time. I do want to go over some key pieces of it once again. And this next time when we meet, I will discuss how we are going to intercalate or interdigitate this calorie restriction and the kind of diet that we are recommending for diabetes reversal. So calorie restriction is a reduction. Sorry?
I said sure, ma'am. Sure. Please go ahead, ma'am. Okay. If you can make it, if you can make it in a slideshow mode from current slide.
Yes, just 1 second. Let me see how I can do that from current slide. There
from current.
Yeah. Okay. So calorie restriction, which is the reduction of the dietary intake below the energy requirements while maintaining optimal nutrition. This is the only known nutritional intervention with the potential to attenuate, slow down, or even reverse aging. So there was a big trial called the Calorie Trial. It was spelled CALERIE, and basically they observed, and they had preclinical and clinical trials, and based on this they designed this Calorie Trial. So they had already seen that lifespan could be increased by 1 to 5 years with an improvement in health span and quality of life when calorie consumption is restricted. And calorie restriction moderates the intrinsic processes of aging through cellular and metabolic adaptations and reducing risk for the development of many of the cardiometabolic diseases that are chronic medical illnesses that are presently by modern Western medicine considered lifelong diseases for which you need to be on lifelong pharmaceutical agents or drugs. In elderly and in specific populations, this calorie restriction will require some unique considerations. So There is evidence that this modifies both primary and secondary aging. Okay, so we will present these caveats in the reversal of aging coaching. We will describe newer and alternative approaches that have comparative effectiveness and fewer deleterious effects. And we will provide thoughts on the future of this important field of study. To our coaches, when we do this aging reversal or diabetes reversal coaching, we will teach them this, and what is coming up in this calorie restriction field is a very important and booming field, and everybody has an opinion on this. Of course, fasting has been known for ages in ancient India. And what we are saying is now there are diets that mimic fasting. And there are ways to restrict calories. It's not a diet per se, it's actually a way you eat and what you can eat that still counts as if you're restricting calories or looks like you're fasting, but you're not hungry. So these are the things our coaches will discuss with patients when we and students, right?
Right.
So in yeah, go ahead, ma'am.
Can I have a question here, ma'am, if I can ask?
Yeah.
When we are talking about calorie restrictions, are we telling about dieting?
Not dieting. So calorie restrictions is something like intermittent fasting or a certain amount of fixed calorie consumption, that is, say 60% or 80% of our calorie need for a day. So let us say we need, for all our activities, we need 2200 kilocalories that we're doing in a day, like somewhat sedentary life, but with a little bit of activity. 1600 kilocalories, then the deficit of 600 kilocalories is made up from the fat stores.
Okay.
And that can reverse not only aging, it can also reverse diabetes and other chronic medical illnesses. And how it does that is by creating stem cell and autophagy. That is, the cells that are that have undergone senescence or become old and have sort of, they're not doing the cellular processes well. When we restrict calories and we do intermittent fasting, those cells are processed more quickly through death, and their constituents are recycled into making fresh new cells.
Okay. Okay.
And stem cells. So that is kind of one of the important mechanisms of how calorie restriction reverses aging and reverses chronic medical illness, is autophagy, or self-eating, basically.
Okay.
So from May 8th of 2007 to Feb 26th of 2010, 238 participants were assessed. 218 randomly assigned to and started on a 25% calorie restriction diet or ad libitum control diet. So if their needs were X calories, they were started on 0.75 X calories. Is that making sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Individuals in the calorie restriction group achieved a mean reduction in calorie intake of 11.9%. So they were put on 25%, but they achieved half of that. But those in the control group only got to 0.8% less than what they were put on, or rather their daily requirements. And a sustained mean weight reduction of 7.5 kilograms versus an increase of 0.1 kilogram in the control group, of which 71% divided by mean change in weight was fat mass loss.
Right.
So 71% of the 7.5 kilograms was fat loss. So about whatever, 4.8 kilos was, no, actually more, 5 point something kilos was fat mass. Calorie restriction caused a persistent and significant reduction from baseline to 2 years of all measured conventional cardiometabolic risk factors, including LDL cholesterol, improved. HDL cholesterol, which is a good cholesterol, went up. Systolic and diastolic blood pressure went down. So it was a consistent and sustained, and it was significant reduction. That means everybody had it, and it was important in the sense it was statistically significant, and then it persisted. In addition, just 1 second, I'm just trying to move this a little bit. It's not in our, that's not it. Hold on, just 1 second. Yeah, there we go. Calorie restriction, in addition, resulted in a significant improvement at 2 years in the C-reactive protein levels, insulin sensitivity index, and metabolic syndrome score relative to controls. A sensitivity analysis revealed the responses to be robust after controlling for relative weight loss changes. So what they're saying is, even if they had not lost the weight, they still had less inflammation, more sensitivity to insulin, and less likelihood of developing metabolic syndrome or worse. Even if you corrected it for their weight loss changes. So what that is telling us is inflammation and the consequences of inflammation, like insulin resistance and truncal obesity and all that came down when the calorie intake was reduced. Moderate calorie restriction reduced multiple cardiometabolic risk factors in young, non-obese adults. They're young, they were not obese, and I don't think a lot of them did not have disease. So these findings suggest the potential for a substantial advantage for cardiovascular health of practicing moderate calorie restriction in young and middle-aged healthy individuals. And they offer promises for pronounced long-term population health benefits. Very simple. Eat less than you need.
Right.
So we talked a little bit about muscular endurance and strength as well. Frequency, intensity, time to fatigue, the number of times you do something. So muscular strength and endurance. Endurance, the ability to contract a muscle many times or hold a contraction with minimal fatigue. Whereas strength is the maximum amount of force a muscle can produce against resistance at one time. So how can exercise improve a chronic condition? This also we discussed actually at quite some length last time. So I will go over these slides a little bit faster because we've already seen these slides.
Yes, ma'am.
If we have a chronic condition, regular exercise can help us manage symptoms and improve our health. It doesn't even have to be aerobic. It doesn't even have to be fat loss inducing. It doesn't even have to be a huge amount of weights. Even simple things like Qigong or yoga therapy. Yoga therapy, by the way, I wanted to tell you, when we do simple yoga therapy, it's just movement with our body weight. And that itself, when it's done consistently, regularly, every day, can reverse many kinds of chronic medical illness and help with weight loss. Just regular movement of all the joints, all the muscles, and being one with the body. That's all that it takes. But that is not all. It is significant. It is the huge thing. And there is nothing, no kind of injury that yoga therapy cannot work with. Yoga therapy is the optimal solution and answer to most chronic medical conditions. I am a trained yoga therapist, and I can tell you this with every faith and confidence. Aerobic exercise can help improve heart health, endurance, and aid in weight loss. High intensity interval training, or HIIT as it is called, is generally safe and effective for most people and can take less time. So here you will see in the States, they'll tell you 9 minutes a day, 20 minutes twice a week. And some of them will tell you just 30 seconds on 4 machines, 2 minutes once a week. These machines generate an enormous amount of force and pressure. And you just have to resist it for 30 seconds in one direction. And then you have to pull it for 30 seconds in the other direction. Boom. You get strength, you get muscles, and you get endurance and all those things. So in high intensity interval training, you alternate exercising at high levels of intensity and exercising at a lower intensity level for short periods of time. I have done multiple fellowships in anti-aging medicine, and I know to write a prescription for this high intensity interval training. And that is based on something called VO2 max testing, where we put a mask on the patient and we tell them to either cycle or do something. And we now have equipment that we can send to people. And I would like to do that in India when we have these coaches that are either reversing a chronic medical disease like diabetes, or they're helping people with weight loss. We can ship them this mask, and then it's a USB, and they connect to a particular software, and they're either just sitting and breathing through that mask for a few minutes, and they're doing exercise after that for a few minutes, just walking or something. Then we record their oxygen consumption, the carbon dioxide generation, and we can tell them, this is how much exercise you need to do. This is the kind of change in your diet you need to make. And with that, you will accomplish fat burning, weight loss, whatever it is that the person's goals are. So we will train the coaches in all this. A metabolic prescription for metabolic chronic medical disease reversal. That was the last type of coaching I'd mentioned to you. So even activities such as walking at higher intensities, they count. And strength training can improve muscle strength and endurance and make it easier to do daily activities. Slow disease-related declines in muscle strength provide stability to joints. Flexibility exercises may help you have optimal range of motion around your joints so that the joints can function best, and stability exercises will help reduce the risk of falls. So how are chronic medical illnesses improved by exercise, including and especially strength training? Heart disease. Regular exercise can help improve heart health. Interval training is tolerated well in people with heart disease, and it can produce significant benefits. So I'll give you a typical prescription based on a person's weight and things like that. I'll just give you how the prescription will be. Okay. Warm up for 5 minutes at a very low rate. So your heart rate is above baseline, and it is in the moderate zone of that chart that we create. Okay. So warm up for 5 minutes in that low heart rate zone. Then another 5 minutes in the moderate heart rate zone. So 5 minutes in the low heart rate zone, 5 minutes in the moderate heart rate zone. Now alternate between the high heart rate and the moderate heart rate zones. 20 seconds in the high heart rate and 1 minute 40 seconds in the moderate heart rate, up and down. So the high heart rate will be, say, above 180 beats a minute. And the moderate will be, say, between 160 and 180 beats a minute. So they will keep their heart rate, and they'll have a heart rate monitor on either around the chest or one of these watches that measures it. They will keep their heart rate above 180 for 20 seconds. Then they will drop it to 160 or 170 for 1 minute and 40 seconds. Then they will do that cycling 4 times, up and down, up and down. And then they come straight to a cool down with a low heart rate zone for 5 minutes. This is a high intensity interval training prescription. It's better to get it from a doctor when a person has a chronic medical illness, but we will train our coaches on how to make the reads, and they can run the prescriptions by us. Once they get comfortable and confident, they can do it on their own. But if a patient has, or if a student has some problems, then we can step in and help them medically also. So there is a very good way to get all this into public health without needing to have to train exponentially more doctors, if that makes sense.
Right. The only worry was, but you answered that also. I was worrying that as an educator, how will they medically justify these things? But you tell that you will be at the back and you will be going to help them.
Totally. They have to lean on us because they don't know. And we have written so many of these prescriptions. And if they lean on me and my team, then they can get an idea of, okay, this will work for this person, this may not work for this person. Let's try out. Maybe it's not 20 seconds and 1 minute 40 seconds. Maybe it's 5 seconds and 1 minute 55 seconds. You know, that would depend on the person. So little bit of individualization, and then once you get them started off, then you can teach them how they can increase it themselves.
Yeah, ma'am, with this, one more question is coming, that
Yeah.
Is such kind of an experimentation has been already done in any part of the world with education?
It's not an experimentation. These are all standard results. It's just a prescription for metabolic exercise. It's called high intensity interval training.
But anywhere in the world, is it been used by educators, trained by for educators, and been utilized in education?
Not by educators. It has been only used by physicians so far, and to a certain extent by exercise professionals and physical fitness trainers, people who study, exercise physiology, human body physiology, and so on and so. People who work with highly performing athletes and so on, their coaches and so on.
Right. So this is the very first time.
Usually, but usually they get the prescription, that is a starting off prescription from the doctor. That's why you have team doctors. And then the trainer will work with the person to get it better. But instead of just having it for the high functioning athletes, what I'm saying is even the coaches can be trained to do this. And everybody can be that. They can be the best, they can have the best body that they can have. Maybe not everybody can look like Ranveer Singh, but everybody can look like the best version of themselves.
Yeah, that's true.
That's not just look like, have the best functioning body for healthy life and long life.
Gee. It's simple that
looks come second, but if it comes also, that's fine. Yeah.
It's simple that you should be fit enough, and fitness will help you in getting age reversal process.
Exactly. Exactly. Muscle training. This is what I'm talking about, the high intensity interval training. It's cardiovascular training.
Okay.
Strength training is for muscles.
Okay.
Cardiovascular training is for heart health and heart longevity. You know how?
Yes, ma'am. Please tell.
It reduces the resting heart rate.
Okay. Okay.
So if you have a certain number of beats for a person's lifetime, let's say, as some people say, that is also the cause of aging if you've exhausted your number of beats.
Okay.
But when a person does high intensity interval training, their heart rate is being pumped up and down, up and down, up and down like this a few times. And then boom, the heart rate actually over a period of time keeps coming down lower and lower.
Right.
So that is how their lifespan is prolonged. On a very organ system level. On a cellular level, there are multiple other mechanisms, chief among which is this autophagy.
Right. Understood.
So diabetes, sorry?
Understood. Thank you.
Good. Excellent. So diabetes, regular exercise can help insulin more effectively lower our blood sugar level. So without exercise, we will require more insulin, more medications. With exercise, we'll require less or no medications, hopefully, God willing. Physical activity can help us control our weight and boost our energy levels. That's the other thing, is when we have heart health, then all the mitochondria, which are the power plants in each and every cell in the body, the number of those goes up also exponentially. So each cell is clearing the protein breakdown products better, making the proteins faster and more functional, folding it nicely so it can do its function. At a cellular level, all the cellular functions are going great when there is more energy, or the power plant in each cell called the mitochondria. And that is possible when there is heart health, and heart health is possible when we have aerobic fitness with high intensity interval training. So it's like a waterfall effect. And exercise can also help control the frequency and severity of asthma attacks. Regular low impact aerobic activities can increase strength and endurance in the back and improve muscle function. Abdominal and back muscle exercises such as core strengthening exercises can help reduce symptoms by strengthening muscles around spine. What is the single most important muscle for back strength?
Spinal cord.
The diaphragm.
Okay, that's what, ma'am, like the educators, they are not exactly
we will teach them what they need to know. We will teach them. This is not rocket science, believe me. We will give it to them in a very, very simple way. Why I'm presenting in this way is so that there is so much of science behind every word that we are saying. I'm only sharing the science now a little bit and a little bit of the results and the recommendations from top institutions. They're all the same.
Can you again tell us?
Teach our coaches, we will not teach them theory like this. We will teach them practical things that they can do to improve the strength of the diaphragm. The diaphragm is the single most important breathing muscle. Okay. So when we get the diaphragm strong, we are very unlikely to have back problems. That's the most strange thing. The most important core muscle is not the paraspinal muscles or the transversus abdominis muscle in the front of the abdominal wall. It is the diaphragm, which is a breath muscle, breathing muscle. And it's an autonomously functioning breathing muscle. Whether or not we're conscious of it, it's going to keep on contracting and relaxing. So how do we harness that to improve our back health? These are breath exercises. Then arthritis, exercise can also reduce pain and help maintain muscle strength in affected joints and reduce joint stiffness. It can improve physical function and quality of life for people who have arthritis. Exercise can improve the quality of life for people who have cancer and their fitness, and lowers the risk of dying from all these cancers, breast, colorectal, and prostate. Exercise can improve cognition in people with dementia, and people who are active on a regular basis are less likely to develop dementia or cognitive impairment. As I mentioned, a sedentary lifestyle sitting in front of the computer for hours a day is even worse than smoking for causing death.
Okay.
So the coach we will train will be able to recommend specific exercises to reduce pain or build strength. Depending on their condition, they will also tell them what exercises to avoid. Or if they have flare-ups for any other reason, what exercises not to do. And in some people, if they have knee or hip or whatever ankle problems, back problems, they may need to also consult a physical therapist before we start them on an exercise plan. And if they have back pain, for example, the coach will tell them, you try to do more walking and swimming rather than cycling and jumping or those kinds of activities that won't strain or jolt the back. So the coach will give them the guidance on that. And if a person has exercise-induced asthma, the coach will tell them, keep your inhaler handy. If a person has arthritis, depending on which joints are involved, the coach will modify or give them different exercises. So we will give the coaches the training. And each one will get an individualized exercise plan that will give them the most benefit with the least aggravation. And before starting the routine, they will talk to the coach about how long their sessions can be, what level of intensity is safe for them. And in general, even if they do 30 minutes of very mindful activity, 5 days a week. If you can walk briskly, great. If a person cannot walk briskly, even if they move, they just do this. It's just some gentle flowy movements like the Qigong movements, and Qigong, you can grow the Qi, you can actually feel it between your palms. And I'm trained in Qigong as well. And I can tell you, it's a very, very gentle and easy way for older people or people with multiple chronic medical diseases to come out of their disease. Same like yoga therapy. Yoga therapy uses yoga. Qigong just uses flowing sort of movements like water like this. Simple, gentle thing. For 30 minutes, if they do this a day, and just put on some happy music, be happy, their disease will get reversed.
And ma'am, what about legs, especially the elder ones who usually keep sitting for long?
Yes. So they also have to do leg exercises. And with yoga, we will teach them different yoga therapy. We can teach them different leg exercises. For Qigong too, there are leg exercises. And so it will be alternate leg weight bearing as much as they can. And, when they lift a leg, then they can do ankle and knee exercises. They can do on the spot marching. If they can't do it without holding on to something, they can hold on to something and do that. So all this the coach will go over with them.
And for the students of schools and colleges?
Yes, they can do even more intense. If they're healthy, they can do much more intense activities. And they can do it at home with weight-based training. So the kind of coaching training will depend on who the audience is. If we want to train school students, we have to do it on a different plane. That will be a much more vigorous and much more rewarding too. But for older people who have diseases, who want to reverse aging and reverse their disease conditions, it's more important to move than to do it vigorously. Just moving is going to heal those conditions. Then the vigor will come with a little bit more time, just a little bit of time. I actually wanted to show a video that I saw on Instagram from India with the Sri Sri Ravi Shankar University. I'll see if I can find it at the end of the talk. It was very, very nice. It was some meeting they had, sports meeting they had in Bangalore, in which 2,000 students from, I don't know if it was schools or colleges. I think it was colleges. They participated all over India. It was mind-blowing. It's so much better than anything I've seen in America, like, truly, honestly. So just moving more and sitting less and slowly working their way up to moving more each day is what the coach will guide them. And if we have a 3-month course, as my mentor, Dr. John Asraf says, to create a new habit and to solidify it as a new neurological circuit in the brain, we should practice it for 66 to 365 days. So if we're doing a 3-month course, we're at 90 days. So the chances that the habit will stick, even if we started on the first day, is much higher. And the student can discuss with the coach to set up the exercise goals. And that is what will help them achieve that. It could be even by the end of the course. Then the coach can check up with them at 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months after completing the coaching, give them support. And I think the results could be really good. So if this is an older person that we are training, right, then the coach will recommend certain precautions before exercising. So if they have diabetes, then the coach will say, make sure you monitor your sugars after the exercise because it will lower your blood sugar. And the coach will tell them to check before an activity, because if it is low already to start with, the person shouldn't become hypoglycemic. Some people may need to eat a snack if their sugar is low before they start exercise. If somebody has arthritis, then a warm shower will help them before they exercise. Heat can relax joints, muscles, ligaments, tendons, and relieve pain. This is why they do hot yoga. And shoes are important. Shoes are important if you're doing Western style exercises. If you're doing yoga, you don't need shoes. And if somebody has more pain, more discomfort, whatever, they can talk to the coach. And if it is something very abnormal, then the coach will tell them, okay, listen, you need to get evaluated by a doctor. But once that's done, come back and join our next course, whatever it is, So the symptoms that they would be looking for are dizziness, unusual shortness of breath, chest pain, or irregular heartbeat. So other things to do with strength training are that regular exercise routine can be tough. So to help to stick to that routine, it is a good idea to exercise with a friend. And if you have a friend who has a similar health problem, whether it's diabetes or arthritis or asthma, then you have some, you can share ideas, strategies, tips, and tricks, whatever you learn on your own individual journey. And then when we set activities, when we choose activities that are fun and set realistic goals and celebrate our progress, so setting realistic goals, choosing activities that are fun, and celebrating progress. Those are the ways to stay motivated. So there are so many other trainings we can do for coaches. Then I wanted to talk briefly about diabetes reversal. Let's do a quick time check. We have 25 minutes.
Yes, ma'am.
So diet is fundamental to tackling the issue of weight loss. Reversing diabetes means reversing the trend of gradually increasing weight, slowly rising blood sugar, worsening resistance to insulin's action, and that results in needing higher and higher doses of medications and worsening complications. If weight is an issue, it can also come down gradually, but it has to come down decisively. Blood glucose values can also come down. Doses of medicines can be lowered, and symptoms such as neuropathy and kidney failure even may go away. I can tell you one of the diseases that everybody thought could not be cured is kidney failure, but I have personally cured it in many patients. So I can tell you there is no complication of diabetes that is not reversible. I can't speak about the eyes so much, but heart, kidney, and neuropathy and all these things can be reversed. The most important ones, life-threatening ones. Eyes, that will also come in a short while, I think. We're almost there. Heart disease can be reversed. This is the one that they worked on first. Can the disease itself go away completely? If someone has much improved blood tests to the point that the condition is no longer diagnosable, then you can say, yes, you've reversed the disease or cured it, right? Let's say somebody never has high blood sugar ever again, and their hemoglobin A1C is perfectly within the normal range. Can you say that they're no longer a diabetic? Yeah, theoretically, yes, you can say that. Others would say that those with genetic predispositions may always retain the tendency and may not ever come off medications. We have seen with our own eyes people come off their diabetes medications and remain off of them for years, months, weeks, whatever. So genetic predisposition or not, the environment is a much larger controller of the causes of disease. So if in type 1 diabetes, for example, insulin will always be required. So what we will offer you in this metabolic training for reversal of chronic medical disease is how to create your own food prescription that will work for your own body to reverse your diabetes. Here are some symptoms of uncontrolled diabetes. Okay, fatigue, excessive urination, excessive thirst, excessive weight loss, very, very high blood sugars, and the complications of uncontrolled long-standing diabetes are damage to arteries, the heart, delicate eye blood vessels, this is called diabetic retinopathy, kidneys, and extremities, meaning the legs, the feet. The blood sugar of 126 milligrams per deciliter or higher after a 2-hour glucose tolerance test, in which 75 grams of glucose are given on an empty stomach in the morning, is diagnostic of diabetes. Another way to diagnose it is by testing blood sugar, hemoglobin A1C, which measures the blood sugar in the red blood cell over the last 3 months. So the red blood cell is recycled every 3 months. It goes into the spleen at 90 days, it's chewed up, and the breakdown products are floating in the blood. They're detoxified by the liver, then they are secreted in the bile, then they go out through the stool. And certain other products that are taken out of the red blood cell from this are used to remake more cells. So the red blood cells, when we test this hemoglobin A1C, we are looking at what is called glycosylated hemoglobin inside of the red blood cells, the hemoglobin that is bound to sugar. And that will tell us how the blood sugar control has been over the preceding 3 months. If that is 6.5% or higher, that is also diagnostic of diabetes.
Ma'am,
Insulin is, yeah, go ahead.
if you allow, I would like to ask a question over here.
Yeah, please.
Nowadays, we have seen that generally this diabetes is very much common in younger student age, teenagers, and even
Yes.
20s. What is the reason for that? And is there any way to get coaching in their education institute, education setup, so that they can get
Yes.
precaution for that, or
That
can
is
reverse?
that we can do. We can train these coaches to coach students how not to get sick with diabetes, or if they have diabetes, how to come out of it. Young students. Type 1 diabetes is a slightly different animal. It is insulin dependent, more or less for life. By the way, let me tell you, I believe that some of the treatments that I've created can also reverse even type 1 diabetes, not to mention type 2. Type 2,
Right.
of course, it can do a very good job. Type 1 is a little more tricky animal because it is actually the destruction of the pancreatic acinar cells by a viral infection early on in life. And so it's not making insulin. You have a problem when the body is not making enough insulin to deal with the sugar highs due to the diet. But type 2 diabetes, which is the more common variety due to insulin resistance, that is completely reversible theoretically in everybody. So as far as young children go, if they have type 1 diabetes, then we can teach them how to manage it much better and how to keep the sugars under control with less medication, with their dietary modifications and so on. With type 2 diabetes, our goal will be to try to reverse it completely with
So
diet, supplements, exercise, and everything. So the metabolic prescription, that will be the end result of the course, but they can start on different elements of that prescription right at the start itself as soon as they get taught. So I'm talking about older adults.
Why is this so that the young children, the younger one, have more prone towards diabetes nowadays? Is there it is due to their lifestyle or something?
Yes. So there is a large component of environment in this. So those young people who are getting type 2 diabetes, that is actually a terrible thing because these are young people we should have protected and prevented from getting sick like this. It is largely the environment. So the amount of toxins in our environment are exhausting the body's detox mechanisms. And a state of prolonged stress from environmental assault and attack will result in diabetes because the cortisol levels from the adrenal gland remain really high in order to reduce the inflammation inside the body, which is inflammation is a response to an assault on the body by toxins. So in order to reduce that inflammatory response, the cortisol level goes high. But what cortisol does is it causes insulin resistance, and that's how diabetes is created. So this is a simplistic explanation. There are many other causes for it. If their parents were diabetic, they are much more likely. If their diets were bad for their parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, everybody, then they are much more likely. Their lifestyle is a huge contributor. So sedentary lifestyle, sitting for hours in front of a computer or a screen every day for years on end, that will result in diabetes. I mean, there's no, these are the facts, so environmental assault, inherited genetics, dietary indiscretions, and lack of awareness or knowledge of the correct way to eat, the correct things to eat because of intergenerational dietary habits and lifestyle. I can't say choices, or you almost have to sit in front of a computer these days to do any kind of learning. So these are the 4 main contributing factors to young people getting it.
Thank you, ma'am. You educated us about that. This is something very important we should know. Absolutely.
We can help our young people come out of it too. Very possible, very doable, and that's our goal here. If we're training teachers and they're going into the school force, then they should talk about how to prevent it, what foods you can eat to not get sick with diabetes in your 40s and 50s or 30s or 20s when you graduate from school and college and go off to get a job. How do you handle stress? How does stress cause inflammation? How does inflammation lead to all these diseases that are chronic, lifelong, so-called lifelong medical illnesses? It's a sort of cascading waterfall that snowballs into a bigger and bigger thing. So insulin is the key, and the receptor for the insulin is the lock, and the receptor for the insulin is on the surface of the cell. So if insulin enters, joins with its receptor and is able to open that lock, then it allows the sugar to enter into the cell. Glucose, once it enters the cell, then blood glucose will not be high. They found that diabetes is less common in countries like Japan, China, Thailand, and other Asian countries, and even in Africa. This was a big clue about what might be leading to it. Those people ate starch. There were no problems with starch. Some of these countries, Japan, China, and all like South India, they're huge rice eaters. But less than 1% of Japanese adults were obese versus 30 to 40% of US adults. And heart disease and cancer were also rare until they moved to the US. Studies have revealed that vegan diets without animal protein or fat, and with very little fat, even from vegetable oils, helped diabetics reduce their weight, lower their blood glucose levels, lower their hemoglobin A1C levels, which means that sugar is well controlled over a 3-month period, like the red blood cell is telling us, and regain insulin sensitivity. So the mechanism of fat inside the cell is it's like gum that is jamming a lock, preventing the key of insulin from opening the cellular door to allow glucose inside the cell for energy generation. So the fat inside the cell is jamming the insulin receptor, not allowing the receptor to bind, and therefore the door cannot be opened to allow the blood glucose to enter the cell where it can be turned into energy. So it's floating in the bloodstream, causing high blood sugars and resulting in diabetes and its complications. Intramyocellular lipids. This were fat found in the cells of the skeletal muscle, in the cytoplasm. So inside of that layer of cell membrane, in the cytoplasm, which is the jelly inside the cell, that's where the fat was found that was blocking this insulin receptor from receiving the insulin. So these people have very high insulin levels, but they don't have insulin sensitivity. They have insulin resistance because insulin cannot bind to its receptor because it's jammed with the fat that's inside the cell. So they were not talking about starch or calorie restriction in these vegan diets, and they were sourcing the carbs from complex carbohydrate sources such as sweet potatoes and yam, and not cereals or grains with seed covers. In general, what would Dean Ornish, who was one of the first doctors, medical doctors, to talk about reversal of heart disease, coronary artery disease causing heart attacks, which is, by the way, in the US, the #1 cause of death in men. He came up with a Dean Ornish protocol to reverse heart disease. He said a healthy diet, low in fat, no cholesterol or animal fat, no sugar, no carbohydrates, healthy complex carbohydrates, that is not restricted, plenty of vegetables, fruits, and lots of water. No smoking, regular exercise, and stress management can lead to reversal of heart disease. It's more or less the same thing for diabetes as well. We have the controversies of something called a ketogenic diet. The ketogenic diet is something that is rich in fat and proteins, especially their animal source, and they don't raise the blood sugar. So if you consume, like steak, like some people eat steak, a lot of people eat steak here. So they consume a steak, or they have something with butter, and they have their potatoes and butter, or if it's not potatoes and they cook their steak in butter or whatever, they feel very full, and they feel full for hours. That is a ketogenic diet, and their sugars won't go up. But in most of these people on the ketogenic diet, the LDL cholesterol, which is the bad cholesterol, does go up. And while the claim is made of the people who propound or advocate this keto diet, that LDL particles of optimal, less atherogenic sizes go up. That is, these are less likely to cause heart disease and they are better sized, low density lipoprotein particles. All LDL particles, regardless of size, increase the risk of atherosclerosis and heart disease. Hemoglobin A1C might go down by a full percentage point, but once the weight loss plateaus, the LDL cholesterol increases again. So the sugar may get controlled on a keto diet, and weight loss may also happen. But the cholesterol is very, very high when the diet is high in animal fat and protein. And there are no long-term studies of this keto diet on people for 5 or 20 years of duration, but there are long-term studies on other kinds of diets, which we will talk about this next time, because I want to do, this is the most important part of the presentation, what we're going to discuss the next time. This is all preliminary and sort of
introductory,
because there's so much of data. I mean, there is enough data for me to fill the next 20 hours with just diet and how to reverse diabetes and heart disease with diet.
Right.
So what is concerning and what's worse is it is probably because adhering to the keto diet over a year is very challenging. And remember, animal foods, they concentrate the toxins in our environment several hundred-fold compared to plant-based foods. So let us say somebody is spraying some pesticide in the grass or in the rice field or paddy field or wheat field. Animals are concentrating this pesticide 100 to 1,000 times more in their body. So when somebody eats a steak piece, they're getting 1,000 times more exposure to the pesticide than somebody who's eating just the wheat or the grass or the rice.
Right.
And animals are consuming 10 to 100 times more the quantity of water because of the food that they have to be fed and compared to the plants. So scientific literature has a lot of data on the long-term effects of reducing carbohydrates and increasing fat-rich and protein-rich foods from animal sources. This provides evidence of what is likely to happen to those who follow a keto diet. Researchers at Harvard School of Public Health looked at data of more than 129,000 people, 129,000 people over more than 20 years. And they found that a low carbohydrate diet based on animal foods was associated with a higher all-cause mortality. That means if they had mainly protein and fat just from animals, steaks, chicken breast, salmon, fillet of fish, whatever, and they had fat, animal, and they had butter, cheese, whatever, they were much more likely to die of cancer, and simply substituting plant foods for animal foods dropped the total and cardiovascular mortality. So I think I will stop with this slide because there's so much more to share here. But I want to put it in slides and rather than, just read my notes.
Ji, ma'am. And with this, I want to say that all these things need to be bring into concern for youth, and they should be into the education system so that they know what they are having. Why is it important to have a vegetarian diet rather than a non-vegetarian diet?
Absolutely.
One
also
question.
Fat. Why is it important to keep the fat low in our diet?
Yes.
No matter the source, it's still plant source is still better than animal source. But the fat has to be low. Vegetarians, we are still eating butter and cheese and milk and all that.
Ma'am, when you are talking about
good though, that's a little different than butter. Yeah.
You're talking about age reversal process and bringing this education into our regular education system. There's one question I want to ask that is coming. More or less, I have asked you questions side by side with your presentation.
Sure.
But one question, as a layman, if suppose I'm a common man, and you talked about good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. So as a layman, if I am an educator, I'm teaching this to my students, and somebody asked me that, ma'am, you talked about good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. So as a common man, how should I know that in my body there is an accumulation of more accumulation of a good cholesterol or more accumulation of a bad cholesterol? How should I get to know this without any treatment?
There is a blood test. It's called a fasting lipid profile. So a person should go fasting, and they can go to any standard chemistry lab, blood chemistries, and they can order themselves, or their doctor can order for them a fasting lipid profile, fasting serum lipid profile. They will take the blood, they will take the serum from the blood, and they will test it for the different types of cholesterol. If you send it to a fancy referral center like Boston Heart Laboratories, Boston Heart will do the particle sizes, they will look for lipoprotein small a, they will look for other types of fats that are not usually reported in just a serum fasting lipid profile. And based on that, they can even make recommendations on diet and lifestyle and all that. That part we will take care of for now. We don't need a laboratory telling us that. We are the clinical doctors. We can share that with you. But the Boston Heart Laboratory testing is far more advanced than the average fasting serum lipid profile. So the short answer is it's a fasting blood test done at the local blood chemistries to find out how much good and bad cholesterol we have. Now, we can, I think the test measures typically the high density lipoprotein, which is the good cholesterol. It measures the triglycerides, which is a direct creation of the sugar. So there's high sugar or high carb intake, then triglyceride levels go up. And the LDL cholesterol, which is a bad cholesterol, is always calculated from the total HDL and the triglyceride levels. And there's a formula for that. So the total cholesterol minus the HDL minus the triglycerides levels divided by 5 is what the low density lipoprotein or the bad cholesterol level is. This is usually not tested.
Okay. Again, my query remains there only. You talked about that I should go to a clinic or to some institute to check up my blood with fasting. But ma'am, I as an educator, my query is, if suppose I don't want to do any testing in the classroom itself, or as a is there any symptoms with which I can identify? Yes, I have a good cholesterol. No, I have a bad cholesterol.
Well, there are not symptoms, but there are many inherited diseases of high levels of bad cholesterols where the people die before the age of 30, 40, and so on.
Okay.
Those diseases have physical signs. So they have something called xanthelasma around the eyes. These are yellow sort of raised deposits of cholesterol around the eyes, on the lids. Yeah. So those children, if they have that, then you can almost be 100% sure their bad cholesterol levels are very, very high. And absolutely, they need to be seen by a doctor. They need to be put on medications. That's not something that we would recommend trying to control with diet. That is an inherited disease of hypercholesterolemia, of bad cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, or triglycerides, or VLDL. These are all bad cholesterols. And these inherited diseases can present with some external signs like that. Peripheral fat deposits around the eye. But in general, the result of a high level of low density lipoprotein for a long period of time is heart attack. It is having gangrene of the toes. It is having strokes, kidney failure. So over 20, 30, 40 years, when a person has had that, high level of the low density lipoprotein or the bad cholesterol, then they will present with symptoms of the end organ damage from that.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We will keep talking more about these such things with you
Absolutely.
in coming weeks. And we are
Looking
very,
forward to it.
yes, ma'am, we are very grateful that you are sharing such a kind of a knowledge, which is very much important for today's education ecosystem.
My
Thank you.
pleasure. Thank you so much, Chitraji. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm so grateful for the opportunity. I just love to share this. And the next time I'll have some pictures also for you because you asked that question.
Sure, ma'am, sure. So, ladies and gentlemen, take good care of yourself, and we will going to meet next week on Sundays. And want to tell that all the important webinars of ours we have lined up on Sundays itself. You can watch at 9:30 in the morning, Vidya Se Adhyatma Vidya Cure at 7, Ayurveda for Global Wellness, and then we'll talk with Dr. PRIYA Visweswaran ji about new avenues for educators in the education system from USA. Thank you so much, ma'am, and
Thank you
have
so
a
much,
very good day.
Chitraji. I appreciate you. And
Ji.
thank you so much, Major General Dr. Gulshan Sharma ji. Thank you, Chitraji. I appreciate you. Thank you so much, young ones and teachers and whoever is watching. I'm so grateful to you, Chitraji, for this opportunity to be heard and to be